Did they really have to make one for every color? Alright, so power batteries are out. They're a thing. They're very colorful. Quite nice. Can actually tell the difference between indigo and blue. Soothing. Gives me hope. Compassion even. Okay, so based on pure technicality and the fact that WizKids wanted to paint a bunch of cool things, we now have, based again on technicality, the largest number of resources in a single metagame ever created. We now have 9, technically, with only one minor difference. We'll get into that in a bit. Each one is very cool, operates differently, so long as all the constructs and the ring are of the same color. Now, when the green power battery was first out, and different color rings were out, and we kind of... there was a lot of just functioning with the lantern, with the ring, trying to get the ring abilities out. That has changed now, and it makes a lot more sense, or actually makes absolutely no sense to come with a multicolored power battery. Because really, any one of these things that you play without that have multiple colors on a single battery is the same thing. That's one thing we've got to note. But once you have all of the same color in one of these things, that's where things actually get different. And as far as the metagame is concerned, that's where things get nutso. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the green power battery, we know how it functions. If it's all green, you are going to be running into a lot of, or an absolute absence of your free actions. And you will weep uncontrollably about it. The black and the white, they've been out for a little bit. The Black Lantern ring makes steal energy more effective. Or the Black Lantern battery, rather, makes steal energy more effective. Pretty cool, not fantastic. It's really very, very situational for a full Black Lantern ring. And once you have a bunch of constructs out, or on a Black Lantern team. Because a lot of those guys are already traded or have some form of steal energy. Also worth noting is that when you use steal energy as range, this triggers. So there are some characters that this actually makes very fantastic. A couple of those vampires are really good now. Black Queen becomes significantly more threatening because of the extra healing you get out of this. Just a thought. The White Lantern is good at really keeping your characters alive there. As well, stopping you from dying and gaining some regeneration is a fantastic combination of things to have. How could you go wrong with that? The Yellow Lantern ring. The ring itself gives you negative only perplex, and it's one of the cheaper rings, which is good. As well, the power battery, the emotional spectrum full construct ability, is good. It's really good for making a tent pole or one-man army significantly harder to hit. So there's things like one of the suggestions one of our guys came up with is using this with Tiamat. Put a couple constructs on it. Tiamat being 255 points in a 300-point game. You generally trust on average your opponent is going to be going -2 to its attack because of the emotional spectrum power on the Yellow Lantern. I'm going to get to you later. The Star Sapphires. The ring is the most nutso thing in the world. In fact, I think based on the Star Sapphires that we actually have available to us right now, this is better off on a non-Star Sapphire team. The Star Sapphires themselves don't consistently get their Mystic's shape change. Some of them have it for a couple clicks. Some of them start with it. Some of them have it mid-dial. The ring itself gives Mystics and shape change to what would normally be a not Star Sapphire character. Plus, they have an ability. The ring itself, the emotional spectrum on this is, I believe, your guys get +1 to their range for each character within for each opposing character within line of fire. Why that is crazy is that's specifically to the number of characters that are within line of fire, not within range. So if you can draw a line of fire to your opponent's starting area with the character you're talking about, that's +1 range. So that's one less thing you can think about with Perplexus that you'll probably have on the board, or other entity bonuses, that kind of stuff. As well, sometimes you got to think about who you're using these on. I'm going to go on. The emotional spectrum on the Red Lantern is Giant Reach. It's okay. It's not terrible. It makes quakes really cool. It makes some attacks really... It gives you a lot of options. I mean, you can attack characters who are on elevated terrain. You can attack characters who are trying to be stealthy with, your Giant Reach. It's really a cool thing. Giant Reach, of course, requiring a line of fire to the square, not necessarily the character. That's why you can do that to a character who's in stealth. If I was to say it was in regards to the most potent one, it's probably the least potent emotional spectrum power, unless you actually consider it on the right character, a character who would need Giant Reach. The idea of putting on a Colossal kind of sickens me, I'm not going to lie. Because a Colossal's base range is already pretty big, and then you add an extra square ahead of that actually makes it exponentially, well, not exponentially, but like almost doubles the effectiveness of it. The Blue Lantern one is actually really good if you're relying a lot on Shape Change, Super Senses, or Impervious on your rolls, because I believe once per turn you can actually re-roll one of those types of rolls when your opponent is hitting you. The Orange Lantern Ring is neat in the fact that if you've got a well-versed, well-put-together team, you can stop your opponent, certain powers on your opponent. I do have an episode coming up on a type of team that might work well with this, that actually used to work well stylistically with a Book of Skulls, and that could change because of this existence, which is weird when you read comic books, actually. I personally think the most game-changing of all is the Indigo one. The Indigo tribe reads the emotional spectrum, and of course I'm going to take my time getting it, right? If the power battery, attached power ring, and constructs are all the same color, and opposing characters that aren't within 4 squares of a friendly core member or adjacent to the power battery can't draw lines of fire to friendly core members. Of course, when you refer to a core member in regards to these rule sets, it'll be a character who's been assigned a construct. Now, why that is gross is it's very specific to opposing characters that aren't within 4 squares of a friendly character can't draw lines of fire to other core members. Think about how that affects Iron Pharaoh. Iron Pharaoh usually sits in the starting area and starts trying to blast people away with the Falcon. Now the Iron Pharaoh's got to be within 4 squares of your characters. Of course, now your opponent is probably going to say, oh, I just got to get one character within 4 squares. Yes, but if you're playing an Indigo battery on your team, you have a team that punishes as well your opponent for getting within 4 squares of you. It's just kind of one of those things you do, right? Right? They're doing that, right? Don't shrug at me. Okay. Anyway, that would be the ideal situation, is you punish your opponent for getting within 4 squares, even if he thinks he can get within 4 squares. But that's also one of those things that people who are still playing the Iron Pharaoh teams, you got to think about. You've got to start thinking, I got to have somebody on the board who's going to try to nullify that ability and make them survivable, which is a little hard once you've spent the 110 points on the Iron Pharaoh. If I was to pick a team for each of these, the Green Lantern full emotional spectrum is good on teams where you plan on being outnumbered. If you're playing a team with like maybe 2-3 figures, you're relying a lot on your heavy, not relying a lot on a great deal of heavy actions. It'll both counter it, and you won't get out actioned as easily because of this. The Indigo tribe the Indigo Lantern being the thing that will be a hard counter for a lot of teams that are currently in the meta and force players to think about other things. I haven't built a team about it necessarily, but you want a team that likes to bring it close. Punish your opponent for being near you and avoid the ranged attacks. Or also, if you don't think you're going to come against another team that's if you think you're going against a lot of teams, or if you have a team with an incredibly long range, and you don't feel that you're going to be coming across a lot of teams that have this, or don't have ways of dealing with this, then this could work. Bullseye not being able to be shot back at is a scary thought. The black and the white, they're very situational. White is good on a team with things like Bizarro, maybe. Bizarro or not Bizarro as much as, say, Dupes. Dupe's a good one. And whatever friend you give Dupe. Because think about regeneration on a character that only takes 1 damage at a time. If you roll a decent enough regeneration roll, then you're back at the start of your dial, and your opponent has now got to go through the frustration of doing those individual pieces of damage again. So there's that. Black Lantern, of course, like I said, with vampire-type characters, is a fantastic thing to have, especially if that vampire-type character can do it from range as well. Yellow Lantern is going to be a fantastic thing on tent poles and one-man armies. The Red Lantern, I haven't found a niche for this yet, but there is a good potential for non-Red Lantern swarm teams to get that, use the penetrating poison less the giant reach in order to absolutely nullify the need to attack your opponent. The Blue Lantern will be, of course, on those teams that fully rely on rolling out against your opponent. But for the most part, I think the Blue Lantern offers up Perplex as well. So any team that's packing a bunch of or a full spectrum Blue Lantern, you have a blue ring on it, which is going to be popping out the blue ability, or the blue Perplex, which is Perplex up your guys. The Star Sapphire team goes again back to, like I said, with the White Lantern. It can also be very functional on any team with a Pizarro, with a head pool, with a dupe, where you're taking at most 1 damage or losing 1 point towards getting to the end, and you want to punish your opponent for it. As well, it'll also give you a rollout against teams that might not have an answer for your shape change. And of course, the Orange Lantern, I believe, much like the Red Lantern, would probably work well on a Swarm team, as the a Swarm team itself will have a great deal number of characters with a large number of abilities. And you can use those abilities to your advantage to stop your opponent who might be focused on using one of the abilities that one of your many characters might have. So these are just a few thoughts on how these things work. Always remember the rings that match up. Never forget the ring powers. Pink being the Mystic's shape change, blue being Perplex up, yellow being Perplex down, white being regeneration after almost dying, black gives you shape change, red gives you penetrating poison, green gives you willpower and a rollout for outwit and perplex, or opposing outwit and perplex. Indigo gives you this monstrous ability to move next to characters within 6 that have taken damage. I believe that's how that ring works. Yeah, if a character within 6 squares takes 3 or more damage, move next to them, and they gain 1 health back. And then the orange has plasticity and barrier, I believe, was the powers that were given by the yellow-orange ring. And this is, of course, to non-core members. If you happen to have a core member by, say, an entity, you have that added advantage of entitying up your stats because you'll be a core member, which gives you +1 to all stats except for damage, which doesn't affect your printed value, which is what it's barrier, plasticity, and orange, which doesn't affect your possessor increase because that's based on printed. That's it for now. So those are your choices for the power batteries. They're pretty cool things. They're in the game now, and good luck to you with them. Metafix is brought to you by Majestic's Comics, Collectibles, and Games down in Costa Mesa, California, near the Orange County Fairgrounds, where they play Heroclix 3 times a week in that store. Don't live anywhere near Costa Mesa, California, or the Orange County Fairgrounds like us? Check down below. We have a link to their web store and their eBay store, where they're always updating with all kinds of new Heroclix singles. Patrick's winning them all the time, so it's a good time to check whenever there's a big tournament around and he's winning.